I've always had this quiet habit of overgiving. Some people call it generosity, others say it's guilt in disguise. Maybe they're both right. I'm Aaron, 34, a software developer who works mostly remote. No kids, no spouse. Just me and my black Labrador, Milo, living in a modest home a couple hours from where I grew up. Most of my adult life, I've been the responsible one in the family. You know, the one who doesn't need anything, who always has it together, which in my family apparently translated to you don't need appreciation either. Christmases were always complicated. As a kid, I remember watching my younger brother, Jason, tear open boxes of the latest video games, remote control cars, flashy clothes, while I got socks. And not fun socks, either. I'm talking gas station multipacks. I'd always smile through it, because I thought maybe I was missing something. Maybe I didn't ask right, or I wasn't clear enough about what I liked. But when I started working at 16, I began buying my own gifts. At least then, I could pretend they came from someone who knew me. My relationship with my mom was always polite. She wasn't cruel. Not exactly. She just had this way of always positioning Jason as the one who needed more. "He's your little brother," she'd say when I'd ask why he got a new phone and I didn't. "He's just going through a rough patch." When I questioned why she dipped into my savings account that one time when I was in college to pay Jason's rent. That rough patch somehow lasted 15 years. Jason was the kind of person who could burn your house down and convince you it was your fault for leaving matches out. Charming, manipulative, always just one excuse away from a fresh start. But I stayed close. Part of me held on to this naive hope that if I just gave enough time, money, space, they'd see me. Not just as the ATM, the helper, the fixer, but as someone worth celebrating, too. Maybe even worth loving without a string attached. Last year, things felt different. My parents were approaching retirement, and I had this idea. A Christmas surprise. I'd quietly booked a $12,000 luxury cruise for them, something they'd always talked about but never actually done. I coordinated everything, picked the route that matched all the places my mom had mentioned wanting to see: Barcelona, Rome, the Greek islands. Chose a ship with senior-friendly amenities, even arranged to have champagne waiting in their suite on day one. It was going to be a thank you, a peace offering, a gesture that said, "Hey, I love you. I forgive you. Let's start fresh." I kept the trip a secret, wrapped the itinerary and boarding passes in a silver envelope with a card I wrote by hand. It said, "To the two people who gave me the world, now I want to give you a piece of it in return." I placed the envelope under their tree when I arrived at their house on Christmas Eve, after the usual long drive through sleet and traffic. Jason was already there, of course. He still lived with them, technically between jobs, though somehow he always had money for bars, sneakers, and whatever new device he bragged about in Instagram stories. He greeted me with a smirk and a half hug. "Look who decided to show up," he muttered, just loud enough. Mom called from the kitchen. "Aaron, don't be dramatic. Come say hi." That sentence sat wrong with me, not because it was rude, but because I hadn't even said anything yet. The house looked like a catalog spread, decorations perfectly placed, fire going, classic carols playing softly in the background. It should have felt warm. It didn't. Something about being back there always made me feel like I was 10 again, trying to win gold stars that never came. Christmas morning unfolded like it always did. Jason opened box after box of gifts: new smartwatch, designer sneakers, limited edition collectible I'd heard him mention once back in August. I kept waiting for my mom to hand me something with that proud, "We thought of you" smile. Eventually, she reached under the tree and pulled out a box with my name on it. My heart lifted. For a second, I imagined it might be something thoughtful. Maybe that book I'd mentioned. A hiking kit. Something. Anything. But she handed the box to Jason. I blinked. That's got my name on it," I said, trying to keep it light. "Oh," she said, like she hadn't noticed. "Well, it was meant for you originally, but Jason saw it and got excited. And I figured, he'd appreciate it more." Jason tore the wrapping off and grinned. "Sweet. Thanks, Mom. Hey, bro, you mind if I keep this?" I didn't even answer. I just looked at the tag. My name was still on it, in my mom's handwriting. And she didn't seem embarrassed. Not even a little. Dad glanced over from the couch and said, without looking up from his tablet, "You're too old for presents anyway, Aaron. You've got everything you need." That line hit different. It wasn't new, but this time it stuck. Too old for presents. Too old to matter. I nodded, smiled, even laughed, pretending to brush it off. But inside, something broke loose. I felt it like a crack in the ice, quiet and spreading fast. That evening, while everyone else watched a holiday movie, I sat in the guest room with my laptop and pulled up the cruise itinerary. I hovered over the Manage Booking tab for a while. My fingers hesitated. I thought about the champagne waiting on the ship, the notes I left in the welcome kit, the surprise I imagined lighting up their faces. Then I clicked, Cancel Trip. The confirmation page popped up. I didn't blink. I didn't even feel angry. Just done. An hour later, their email notification pinged on the shared family tablet sitting on the coffee table. I didn't point it out. Jason glanced at it. Hey, Mom, looks like your cruise got canceled. My mom squinted, confused. What? What cruise? Jason scrolled through the message, reading aloud. Booking reference. Aaron Jackson, luxury Mediterranean cruise package. He stopped, looked at me. Oh, I said casually, not looking up from my phone. Yeah, I'd booked it for you guys. But you're right. I'm too old for presents. The room went completely silent. And that was just the beginning. I didn't drive home that night. I stayed the full length of the visit, even helped clean up wrapping paper and do dishes, because that's what I always did, play the part of the dependable son, the grown-up in a room full of children wearing adult clothes. But inside, something in me had shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was emptiness, a kind of hollow clarity that whispered, this is who they are. This is who they've always been. And I think that's what scared me most. Not that they had crossed a line, but that there was never a line to begin with. The morning after Christmas, I poured coffee in the kitchen while Jason stood shirtless in the living room, watching a YouTube video on the new smartwatch he'd just unboxed, my gift. Mom stood next to him, laughing about how tech-savvy he was, like she hadn't asked me just 2 days prior how to connect her Bluetooth speakers. Isn't it cool? Jason called out. It even tracks my sleep. Finally gonna get my health back on track. I didn't respond. I just sipped the coffee and watched as Mom beamed at him like he'd solved world hunger. Dad walked in a few minutes later, yawning. Hey, Aaron, he said, glancing at me. Any chance you could help us out with that gutter leak before you head out? Looks like the corner's pulling off the roof. I blinked. Now, he shrugged. While you're here, you're good with that sort of thing, right? Sure, I said, swallowing the heat rising in my throat. I'll grab a ladder. And I did it. In the cold. Alone. Jason never stepped outside. Mom never brought out gloves or even peeked to say thank you. And when I finished, numb-fingered and soaked, I came back inside to find them finishing the leftover cinnamon rolls I had brought. The ones Mom had told me to just leave in the kitchen because they were too sweet for her. That's when I knew I was done trying. I drove back home that afternoon. The 2-hour ride was dead quiet except for Milo's occasional snore from the passenger seat. I stared out at the winter trees blurring past, thinking about how much time I'd spent trying to win approval from people who treated my bare minimum existence as excess. 3 days later, I got a text from Mom. Mom, did you really cancel the cruise? That was going to be our retirement celebration. I can't believe you'd be so spiteful. No apology. No question. Just blame. I didn't reply. The next message came a few minutes later, this time from Jason. Jason, real mature, bro. You cancel a trip for them because of a stupid gift? Grow up. That one did sting. Not because I cared what Jason thought, but because it confirmed something I already knew. They'd told him everything. The cruise had become a talking point. Another thing to use against me. By New Year's Eve, I thought I was ready to let it go. I told myself, Aaron, just move on. Don't give them another inch of your peace. But then came the video. At 11:38 p.m., I got a family group chat notification. And white toast. I hesitated before tapping, but curiosity won. It was a 45-second video. Jason had his arm around Mom as she held a glass of champagne. Dad sat in the background, glass in hand. They were laughing, clinking glasses, cheering to family and fresh starts. Then Jason raised his glass. To the real MVP of the family, Mom. The woman who raised me right and always had my back. And to Dad, who never gave up on me even when I didn't deserve it. Cheers. Claps. Then a pause. Jason grinned at the camera. And shout out to my big bro for reminding us what not to do with money. Laughter. Loud. Seriously though, love you, man. He added as an afterthought, clearly not meaning it. My chest went tight. I stared at the screen until the video looped again. There was no mention of me. No toast. No thank you. No, we miss you tonight. Just that one mocking line, buried in false cheer. And I realized something. My family didn't just take me for granted. They saw me as disposable. I closed the group chat, blocked it, then sat in the dark with Milo at my feet, watching the fireworks pop silently outside my window. And I whispered to myself, that was the last holiday I ever spent trying to earn their affection. But I didn't know the worst part was still coming. 2 weeks into January, I got a call from my cousin Rachel. We weren't close, but we'd catch up on holidays, send memes occasionally. She worked in finance, had always been the neutral party at family events. Hey, Aaron, she said cautiously. Quick question. Are you giving your parents money again? I frowned. No. What? There was a pause. Because your mom told Aunt Jen that you offered to cover the property taxes on their house this year. Like, $3,000. She said you felt guilty about the cruise thing, and this was your way of making up for it. I sat down. That's not true. At all. Yeah, I figured. But she's telling people. A bunch of people. Said you're the one who insisted. I thanked Rachel, got off the phone, and pulled up my banking app. Sure enough, there it was. A pending auto payment set to send $3,064 to the county tax assessor's office from my linked family account. A shared account I'd opened 4 years ago when Dad had a medical scare and I agreed to be a backup signatory. I'd forgotten about it. They hadn't. I froze. Rage curled through my stomach like acid. I called the bank, stopped the payment, removed myself from the account. Then I sat on my couch in silence, the kind that feels loud. They hadn't even asked. And somehow, they had turned me into the villain. I spent the rest of that night pacing. Not just angry, but betrayed. This wasn't just about Christmas. This wasn't about a gift. This was decades of subtle theft, of my time, my effort, my emotional labor. My entire adult life had been a series of unreciprocated gestures. And this was the moment I felt it all at once. But nothing, not even that, prepared me for what came next. About a week later, I got an email from an old high school friend, Nick. We hadn't spoken in years, but the subject line made my stomach turn. Just FYI, saw this on Facebook. I opened it. It was a screenshot of a public Facebook post from my mom. Some people forget where they come from. We raised our sons with love, but only one of them shows up when it counts. Thank God for Jason, who never turns his back on family. Some gifts come with strings attached. We prefer love without a receipt. I sat there stunned. Dozens of comments underneath. Extended family chiming in. Jason's always been the golden boy. So sorry you're dealing with that. You deserve better. You're lucky to have Jason. They had turned me into the villain of their public narrative. After all the things I'd done in silence. Paid bills, fixed things, funded dreams. I was now the ungrateful, bitter son who held gifts over their heads. I didn't sleep that night. And by morning, I wasn't angry anymore. I was cold. Focused. Because when someone burns every bridge and hands you the matches, you don't have to wonder anymore if you're the bad guy for walking away. You just make sure they never have the chance to do it again. And that's when I started planning. I didn't say anything. Not to Mom, not to Jason, not to the cousins tagging each other under that post, laughing in the comments like it was some kind of inside joke. I just logged out of Facebook completely and deleted the app from my phone. I wish I could say that made me feel better. It didn't. It just made the silence louder. The days that followed felt hollow. I'd wake up, feed Milo, brew coffee, stare at my work screen for hours trying to concentrate, and fail. I wasn't eating much. Wasn't sleeping either. I'd scroll through old messages, rereading every passive-aggressive comment my mom had sent over the years. The little digs disguised as jokes. The times she forgot my birthday. The times she told people I was too private, like my boundaries were a character flaw. One afternoon, I sat on the floor of my living room with a box of receipts and greeting cards, things I'd kept over the years for reasons I didn't even understand anymore. Inside was a birthday card from when I turned 27. It was unsigned, blank inside. The sticker on the back said it came from a grocery store. I remember getting it in the mail that year, with no envelope, no note, just my name scribbled in ballpoint pen on the front. I'd kept it. Why? I don't even know. Maybe part of me believed keeping those scraps proved the relationship was real, that even if they forgot me, I hadn't forgotten them. But that day, I finally let go. I took that card and every receipt, Every thank you note I'd written for gifts I never got a response to, every faded printout of a flight confirmation for a trip I paid for, and I fed them into the shredder, one by one. It wasn't angry. It was quiet, like cleaning up after a storm. That night, I turned off my phone completely. No distractions. Just me and Milo on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching some old documentary about a guy who rebuilt his life from scratch after his entire business collapsed. Something about that resonated in a way I hadn't expected. I realized I'd been living the same emotional cycle over and over. Give, hope, get hurt, swallow it, repeat. And I was done repeating it. The next morning, I sat down and did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter. Not to send. Just for me. It started with one sentence. You were not the problem. I kept writing, letting it all out. The resentment. The confusion. The guilt I didn't even know I was carrying. I admitted how much I'd longed for a family that saw me. Not what I could do, but who I was. I wrote about every time I'd smiled through pain, every birthday they ignored, every favor I gave without thanks, every moment I second-guessed myself because they made me feel like I didn't deserve better. When I finished, it was 7 pages long. I folded it, sealed it in an envelope, and tucked it into the back of my journal. Then I opened my laptop. There were things I'd been putting off, projects I told myself I didn't have time for, a side hustle I never quite committed to, a promotion I was too burned out to pursue. But now, I had all the time in the world. No more late-night calls asking me to fix someone's internet. No more surprise Venmo requests from Jason with a "Can you spot me this once?" message. No more holiday guilt trips. I started simple. First, I filed paperwork to dissolve that shared account with my parents officially. I requested full removal of my name, and when the bank called to confirm, I didn't stutter. I made sure there were no backdoors left. Then I emailed HR at my company and asked about internal transfer opportunities. I worked in dev support, but I'd always wanted to move into product design. I'd done courses online, dabbled in UI/UX work for friends, but never had the confidence to make the switch. To my surprise, they were interested. Said they'd been looking for someone with my skill set to join a pilot project team launching in Q2. They asked me to submit a proposal. I spent a full weekend putting it together, drinking way too much coffee, tweaking every line of code and every design slide until it felt like a resume of my soul. When I hit send on that proposal, it was the first time in years I felt like I was building something for me. But the biggest shift wasn't career, it was personal. I joined a weekend hiking group, not because I needed to network or be social, but because I wanted to be around people who chose to show up. Milo came with me. People loved him. And slowly, as the snow melted and winter faded, so did some of the weight I'd been dragging for years. By early spring, I was waking up with purpose again. Not joy, exactly, but clarity. And that was more valuable. I'd replaced my phone entirely. New number. Clean slate. I didn't tell my family. The only person who had my new contact info was Rachel, my cousin, who had quietly checked in once or twice after the Facebook post drama. You okay? She'd ask via email. Better every day, I'd reply. In April, something wild happened. That project I applied for, I got it. Full transfer. New title. New pay bump. Remote, with a travel stipend for quarterly team meetups. It was like stepping into a new version of my life. One that didn't revolve around proving my worth to people who'd already decided it. I took my first work trip to Portland that May. It was only 3 days, but when I landed and stepped into that hotel room overlooking the water, I felt like I could breathe in a way I hadn't in years. No calls, no guilt, just peace. And yet, rock bottom doesn't always announce itself with disaster. Sometimes it's subtle. A quiet Sunday morning when you realize you don't know who you'd call if you got good news. Or when you sit in a restaurant by yourself and realize this is the first time in months you're not afraid someone's going to demand something from you right after. That loneliness hit me in waves. Not often, not sharp, but deep. I missed the idea of a family, not the reality. And it's in that space, that in-between of grief and relief, that I started rebuilding. I joined a therapy group. Nothing fancy. Just a Zoom session on Tuesdays with 5 other people who also had complicated family stories. I didn't say much the first few sessions, just listened. But by week 4, I found myself talking, not venting, just explaining. And no one interrupted, no one downplayed. They just listened, and that felt like oxygen. Then came something I didn't expect. One night, after a session, I opened my email to find a message from an unknown sender. Subject line: closure. It was from my dad. The body of the email was short. Aaron, your mother is upset that you've cut contact. Jason's not happy either. I don't know what's going on, but I'd like to talk. We're family. That should mean something. Let us know when you're ready to be reasonable. Dad. I stared at the message for a long time. No apology. No questions. Just another command. Be reasonable. It was like being pulled back into a bad dream. Like all the progress I'd made suddenly didn't matter. But here's the thing. That email didn't crush me. It confirmed what I already knew. That their version of family had always been conditional. That they didn't want to understand. They wanted compliance. Silence. A return to the old script. So I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my journal. Pulled out that old letter. Read it again. And then I wrote a new one. This time it said, "You've already climbed out. Don't look back." But just as I started to feel whole again, just as I began to accept peace over approval, something else landed in my lap. A warning. A message I wasn't supposed to see. A revelation that would take everything I'd quietly endured and set the stage for something much bigger. It started with a name I didn't recognize. I was doing some routine cleanup on one of my older email accounts, the one I used years ago when I first started freelancing. It was mostly junk now. Expired job listings, newsletters I never unsubscribed from, old software promo codes. But as I scrolled past another spammy subject line, one message caught my eye. Subject: payment confirmation for Jason Underwood. My brother's full name. The sender? A company I'd never heard of, Westbridge Financial Solutions. I opened the email. Hello, Aaron Jackson. This is a confirmation that your payment of $874.52 for client Jason Underwood has been processed successfully through your linked business card ending in 2091. If this charge was made in error or you wish to dispute the transaction, please contact our billing department. I froze. That was my old card. A card I hadn't used in over a year. One I'd kept linked to a now-defunct business PayPal account I hadn't thought about since I left the freelance world. I clicked through to the merchant site and found more transactions. Small amounts at first. A few $40 here, $100 there. But over time, they added up. Thousands of dollars. And every single one was tied to my brother's name. I started digging. Pulled the account statement history. Searched my cloud storage. And that's when the pattern emerged. Jason had been using my old business account to fund personal expenses, monthly subscriptions, pay later financing, even a few direct purchases from luxury retailers. He must have kept the login from years ago when I briefly let him borrow my card to rent some camera gear. That was supposed to be a one-time favor. He had promised to delete the info. He never did. But it wasn't just about the money. Some of the transactions were listed as client reimbursements. Others were labeled consulting fees. On paper, it looked like I was doing shady side gigs through this account. If the IRS ever audited me, these would all point to me. That's when I realized this wasn't carelessness. It was calculated. I reached out to Rachel again. She'd always been honest with me, even when it was hard. I forwarded her the email and asked, "Have you ever heard of Jason working with anything called Westbridge?" 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "I have," she said bluntly. "That's the debt relief firm my dad used last year. It's not exactly reputable." "Wait, why is it linked to you?" I told her everything. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Aaron, you need to check your credit report. Right now." So I did. And there it was. A new credit card opened in my name 6 months ago. Balance for $1,918. Min payment overdue. Another personal loan, also in my name, opened 8 months ago. Status delinquent. I felt sick. I'd spent years playing the good son, the helpful brother, the silent provider. And Jason had used my name, my identity, and my past generosity as a launchpad for fraud. And the worst part? I don't think my parents were clueless. I remembered the property tax incident, the cruise cancellation, the way Mom posted publicly that I was holding money over their heads. Suddenly, it all clicked into place. They weren't just enabling him. They were protecting him. Because if the truth came out, the golden child's halo would crack, and the house of cards they'd built around him would come tumbling down. So I did what I should have done years ago. I got a lawyer. His name was Peter Ellsworth, mid-40s, blunt as a hammer. No nonsense. He looked through the documents I gave him, screenshots, emails, credit pulls, and nodded slowly. Your brother committed identity theft, he said plainly. Multiple counts. Your parents may be complicit if they knew or benefited. I asked him what my options were. You can press charges, he said. But if you want to play it smart, you don't go in guns blazing. You build your case. Quietly. Let him dig his own grave. Then drop everything when the timing is perfect. I nodded. I don't want money, I said. I want truth. And I want them to feel everything they made me feel. Peter smiled. Then we do this the right way. And so began the setup. We started by securing my financials. Froze all credit activity. Changed every password. Filed fraud alerts. Peter contacted the credit bureaus and flagged the 2 illegal accounts. Within a few weeks, we had documentation proving I'd never authorized those lines of credit. Then we contacted Westbridge Financial, the shady firm Jason was using. They weren't helpful at first, but Peter knew how to apply pressure. A formal letter went out, demanding full records tied to any account associated with my name. They stalled. He pushed harder. When they realized I had legal backing, the documents arrived. It was all there. Jason had used my identity to co-sign on 2 loans and signed off with a scribbled digital signature. The address he used? My old apartment. The email? A Gmail account that looked almost like mine, except for one swapped letter. The kicker? One of the forms had a photo of his driver's license uploaded alongside my name. We'd nailed him, but I didn't want to confront him yet. Not directly. Not with a lawsuit or police report. I wanted this to be slow. Painful. I wanted him to sweat. Peter suggested a private investigator to get more background. I wasn't sure at first, but curiosity got the better of me. And what we found, it made my blood run cold. Jason was using my credentials to land contract gigs. Someone had hired him, thinking he was me. It was some small startup. He built them a cheap app, stole parts of the code from open source projects, and then ghosted them after getting paid up front. When they tried to contact Aaron Jackson, the email bounced. They never got their product, never got their money back. I tracked down the founder on LinkedIn, reached out gently, and explained that I was the real Aaron Jackson, and that my identity had been compromised. They were furious. Not at me, at him. They offered to send every document, every email, every screenshot. I took it all. The puzzle pieces were coming together. But I needed one more thing before I could act. A pattern. I searched old files, credit cards, shared Amazon accounts, Venmo logs, even old Dropbox folders. And that's when I found it. An invoice. From 5 years ago. A camera rental charge to my name, one I never used. Jason had picked it up, returned it late, left my info as the primary renter. The company charged me $450 in damages. I'd paid it, back then, without thinking. Just assumed it was a mistake. It wasn't. It was the first time he'd tested how far he could go, and I had let it slide. Not anymore. Peter helped me draft a full report, a timeline of fraud, identity theft, impersonation, and financial abuse. We included every receipt, every email, every forged signature. Then I did something that made my hands shake. I sent a letter to my parents. Not an angry one, not even emotional, just factual, legal, precise. It said, "This is a formal notice regarding multiple fraudulent activities tied to Jason Underwood, including identity theft and unauthorized use of my financial accounts. I am aware of your involvement in certain transactions, including public statements that may qualify as defamation. I have refrained from pressing charges at this time. However, I have retained legal counsel and am prepared to pursue full civil and criminal action should further contact or financial activity occur without my consent. This is not a threat. It is a boundary. No signature. Just my initials. Sent via certified mail." I waited. No response. 3 days later, Jason called from an unknown number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Dude, what the hell are you doing? You're going to ruin everything. Just call me back. Please. We can talk about this. You don't have to burn the whole house down." But that was the problem. The house was already ash. I was just building something new in its place. And I had one last move left before the match was lit. I didn't reply to Jason's voicemail. Didn't text. Didn't email. Didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing whether I'd heard it at all. That's what he hated most. Not the anger, not even the threat of consequences, but silence. Jason thrived on chaos, attention, and manipulation. When I cut off the oxygen supply, he started to unravel. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. No word from my parents. No new charges on my accounts. No attempts to reach me through mutual friends. Just quiet. But that was the deceptive calm before the storm. Because one morning in early July, Peter called me with news. They tried to refinance the house, he said. I blinked. What? Your parents? We had a monitor in place. You asked us to track for any financial activity that might involve your name. The bank flagged the application because they tried to list you as a co-signer. Again, I didn't even know what to say. Peter continued. They must have assumed the freeze had lifted. Or maybe they were testing to see if they could sneak you onto something without alerting the system. I clenched my jaw. So they still think I'm a resource. Even now. They don't think, he said bluntly. They survive. And you were their lifeline. Until you weren't. It was the final straw. Not the cruise. Not the stolen money. Not the Facebook smear campaign or the fake consulting jobs. This quiet, slimy attempt to use my name again. Months after I'd gone no contact, after legal threats, after cold silence. It told me one thing with crystal clarity. They hadn't learned a thing. So I made the call. Let's do it, I told Peter. File everything. Every charge. Every report. If they wanted war, they just got it. And we did. First came the legal filings. Peter submitted the complete fraud packet to the local police department in my hometown, citing identity theft, unauthorized financial activity, and impersonation. Since the crimes crossed state lines, some of the credit transactions were linked to out-of-state merchants. We also filed with the FTC and the state attorney general. Then we looped in the IRS. Peter helped me write a statement detailing the fraudulent 1099 income from Jason's fake freelance jobs under my name. The IRS took that very seriously, because now they weren't just defrauding me, they were messing with federal tax records. An audit was opened into Jason's activity under my identity. A real one. Next came the fraud alerts and blacklistings. Rachel, who'd become a quiet ally behind the scenes, helped me contact a few companies she had connections with. One of them was a client Jason had tried to pitch recently, using my background and work samples. She sent me the pitch deck. It was my resume, my projects, my code. I contacted the company directly and explained everything. Not only were they horrified, but they immediately flagged Jason in their internal system and shared the information with 2 other firms in their partner network. Jason's name was now on a do not contract list shared between a circle of startups and fintech companies. He didn't know it yet, but the doors were closing. Then came the financial dominoes. When the IRS probe began, Jason's accounts were frozen for review. His last-minute tax filings didn't match the digital records from his consulting gigs because they weren't his. The audit flagged him. Then the fraud cases began rolling in. Remember the startup he scammed with the Ghost app? They pressed charges too, after learning he'd done it under my name and lied about being me. Now they had legal cause to sue him personally. Peter coordinated with their legal counsel, and we exchanged documentation. We didn't team up, but we definitely walked parallel paths. Jason was served 2 civil complaints and 1 criminal subpoena within a span of 10 days. Then I sent one final message. Not to Jason, not to my parents, to everyone. I logged into my old Facebook account, reset the password, reactivated the profile, and made one single post. It was simple. For those wondering why I've been silent, my brother has stolen thousands of dollars, opened accounts in my name, and impersonated me to commit fraud across multiple states. My parents knew. They helped cover for him. Legal action is underway. I'm no longer the family scapegoat. I'm just done. I didn't allow comments. Just reactions. And they came fast. Thumbs up. Shocked faces. Private messages. A few extended family members even called me, apologizing for believing my mom's version of the cruise story, for laughing at Jason's New Year's toast, for staying silent when they should have spoken up. Some of them sent screenshots of group chats I wasn't in. Chats where Jason had bragged about finessing a few things in his life, where mom had defended him with lines like, "Aaron's just sensitive," or "he owes us," after everything we did for him growing up. I saved every screenshot. Then I blocked them all, because I didn't need closure from people who only believed me once the ship was sinking. Then came the collapse. Jason lost his car. The repo happened late one night in August. Someone filmed it and uploaded the video to a local neighborhood group. The caption said, "Guess this guy stopped paying his bills." Always has a story. I watched it twice. Never cracked a smile. Mom called me 2 days later from a new number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Her message? Aaron, this has gone too far. Jason's made mistakes, but you don't need to destroy his life over it. We're family. We can fix this together. Just call me back. Please. I played it once, deleted it, then blocked the number. Then came the final nail. Peter forwarded me a message in September, an update from the county court. The fraud investigation had resulted in charges being formally filed. Jason was being summoned to appear in court for 2 counts of identity theft, 1 count of financial impersonation, 1 count of falsifying legal documents. Civil penalties tied to misrepresentation and damages. He wasn't going to jail. Not yet. But the fines were brutal. The restitution order would gut him financially, and the record would follow him for years. That's when the house went up for sale. My parents didn't announce it, but I saw the Zillow listing pop up, shared by a local agent I followed back when I lived there. The description said, "Charming family home in need of minor repairs. Motivated sellers." Translation? They were desperate. Jason had drained them. I wasn't bailing them out this time. And with his name dragged through public records, no one was going to hire him anytime soon. The golden child had tarnished, and they had no one left to blame. I didn't celebrate, didn't pop champagne or post memes or throw a party. I just woke up one morning in October, poured a cup of coffee, took Milo for a walk, and realized I felt light, lighter than I had in years. No bitterness, no guilt, just peace. I'd spent my entire adult life trying to be the glue that held my family together. But some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to fall apart, so you can build something better. And I had. That evening, I sat on my porch, sun dipping below the trees, laptop open in my lap. I pulled up an old photo of my parents, Jason, and me, taken during a rare happy moment at some long-forgotten family barbecue. I studied their faces. Then I clicked delete. No fanfare. No ceremony. Just freedom. And as Milo curled up beside me and the last of the light faded, I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let the quiet settle in like a warm blanket. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of being free.